Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. Conference Championship weekend is here as we're here to preview both games in the NFL this weekend. And the first game we're doing is the NFC Championship game between the Detroit Lions and the San Francisco 49ers. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis. And this week I'm joined by two returning guests, two great friends of mine. First of all, in the red corner with me today is 49ers fan Paul Hope. Paul, how are you?
Feeling Purdy relieved after last weekend, but looking forward to Sunday, Andy.
Whoa!
So not Purdy good, Purdy relieved.
I might be Purdy good by the end. So the background is if I don't get a Purdy pun in, it jinxes the team. So every time I do a pod with Andy, I've got to get a Purdy pun. So thanks for having me back on, buddy. It's always great to talk football with you.
And always be having you on, mate. Always a pleasure having you on, talking all things NFL. And in the light blue corner with us today, back with us, is Lions fan Aaron Fletcher from Asleep at Work. Aaron, how are you?
I'm good. I've just found out that I've got a friend. I can tell my wife now. I'm very happy. So, no, I'm good. I think we're riding on one of the highest waves I've ever been. Took the time out this week to recognise what a 12 months in sport I've had as a fan. And ended up, I don't know how PG you want to keep this, but you know that gif from South Park with Randy after he accesses computers?
I don't watch South Park.
No. Very old popular meme. A computer covered in certain substances, and that's been me all week.
Yeah, I mean, for a Lions fan, I mean, you know, you've sort of have experienced it really in both sports, both football really. As a City fan and Lions fan, you've had both teams who have been, you know, basically in the mud for a lot of it. I mean, look at the Lions and City back in maybe the mid '90s or maybe the late '90s, and just how different it is to now. And just, you know, we've seen the City over gradual time. You've managed to, you know, win a treble in the last 6 months, and for the Lions, has really been a much quicker sort of transformation of, you know, going from really, what were you, 1-6 in October 2022, fast forward to 14 months' time. And you can say the same thing for players like Jared Goff as well. The transformation we've seen and how quickly it's changed. And to win not just one playoff game after not winning one in 30 years, but win two. To win as many games in the playoffs in the last 2 weeks as you've had in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And also to host two playoff games and have a third playoff game as well. And with being basically one game away from a Super Bowl. Just tell us and tell the audience, Aaron, just your feelings right now and just how the season's been for you and just what it means for the Lions fan to see what's happening to your team right now.
I think I spoke to you just before the season, and I think, but actually, one of the things we spoke about while I was on your other podcast, more about Manchester City and how the season looks. I think we were talking a lot with Lions fans earlier this season. One of the things we said was 11 wins would be amazing. We could do more, but 11 wins, amazing. The NFC North is there for the taking. We'll go toe-to-toe with the Vikings, but the NFC, if we take the NFC North, even better. And then it's if we get a playoff with just one playoff win, and if we can do 11 wins, NFC North, and one playoff win, we can call the season done as the greatest season probably it's since the 50s in Detroit. We were all so happy with that, and to have won 12 with a couple of those games that one of those was lost in overtime. One of those was we won't delve into it, but the Cowboys loss, which is what it is. We could have very easily had 14 wins on the season, very easily. We won the North with a couple of games to go and 2 playoff wins. That it's exceeded every expectation. So I think, and it's just pure elation at the moment, and it feels like a weird game where, unless we obviously speak about this a bit later on, but unless it's a blowout, unless like we get absolutely mauled in every stage of the game, if we lose on Sunday, we can walk away so happy. It's a very weird position to be in, I think, to be able to lose in an NFC Championship game in any circumstance and be happy still with the season. So it's an odd position. Just one of just being happy. We're all just being happy right now.
Well, as 2 to 3 of us are happy. I wouldn't say I've been too happy with sports of late. I mean, you look at You mentioned about being competitive in games. I mean, that Chiefs loss. I mean, the Ravens loss particularly, and the Bills losses. Just all of them have just been all not even contests. And at least the Bills lost last year in the wildcard round. At least, like I said, then we took them close. We had a third choice quarterback. Whereas on the flip side, this season to lose your last three games, not win your division, and then lose like you did in the playoffs. Yeah, not a great week for me when you consider the Klopp news today as well. Not being the best 10 days of my life sport wise, but for you, Paul, I mean, Aaron talked about really completely going against expectations, but for you, you were expecting to get here at least. It was seen as if you're not making at least the NFC title game, something's gone wrong, and I certainly thought that unless you play the Eagles in the divisional round, then maybe that. But of course, you made it in. Not maybe in the way you thought you would against the Packers. Is the word you mentioned Purdy relieved anyone? Is the word after that game just for you?
Well, the 49er faithful UK were used to the emotional roller coaster, especially with Jimmy G under centre, because you never knew what game you were going to get. We were all very bullish heading into that game last week. I came on your show last week, Andy. I'm known in the community as being one of the more positive 49ers fans, but some of the takes I saw last weekend, I mean, we've talked about it there. I was watching your show with Alex Simpson the other day, and I was like, oh my God, there's a second Lions fan. I'll get onto it in a moment because I've got a friend who's a Lions fan. But you've hit the nail on the head there. 4 out of the last 5 NFC Championship games, the Nines there, 3 in a row. Yeah, at half time last week, there was some people in my community calling for Shanahan to be fired, calling for a change. And I'm sat at home thinking, it's 7-6. For as well as the Packers were supposed to be this super hot offense, to put 6 points on us. Yes, Brock Purdy wasn't perfect. I liked the sound bit that you clipped of me. Whenever you come on Andy's show, you've got to be careful because you're going to appear on TikTok. And he lured me in with a bit of Brock Purdy baiting, and I took the bait. But again, we're sat here now, Andy. Last week, Brock Purdy was accused of not being able to put the team on his back. Brock Purdy was accused of not being able to lead the team in a fourth quarter comeback. We all saw that stat. Kyle Shanahan on 30 when losing by 7 points or more. So when I say Purdy relieved, of course, I'm not going to come on this show and say it was the greatest game in the history of the world. But I think it was what was needed. We're going to come up against a harder opponent in my eyes this weekend. I love what Dan Campbell has done at the Lions. My good friend Andy, who's a Lions fan I've alluded to, he watched Dan Campbell's first game with me at home. He travelled down from Newcastle to Middlesbrough. We sat down a couple of years ago to watch the Lions 49ers. The Niners raced into a massive lead at halftime. Then the Lions nearly beat us. It was like a 41-33 game for the ages. And I remember him saying back then, I'm excited for this Lions team. We'd had Matt Patricia, we'd seen Stafford go, and he echoed everything that you've just said about 11 wins. Can we win the division title? Can we win one playoff game? Now you've won 2. And it's weird for 49ers fans, Andy, because we're the pantomime villain this week because everybody else in the NFL wants the Lions to win. It's a great feel-good story. Most people who were fans of the show want to see different teams. You alluded to it last week. You want to see a different winner in the Super Bowl. And I suppose if I was sat at home and the Niners weren't here, I'd be rooting for the Lions. So I get it. So yeah, we're the overwhelming favourite. I think 7 points I've seen. The over-under's 51. It's not going to rain, which apparently is Brock's kryptonite. But no, I'm excited. It's just a shame we're getting to the end of the NFL season. And like you today, I've seen the Klopp news that's dominated Twitter on this side of the pond, which I don't want to mourn too much, but it's the NFC Championship weekend. That should be the priority for me.
I mean, you make a good point there about what you needed, because I'm looking here at basically all your playoff results of the last 4 or 5 years, certainly of the Shanahan era. Look at the year you made the Super Bowl. You beat the Vikings by 17 points, beat the Packers by 17 points as well. And obviously you let the lead slip against the Chiefs. And look at the 2 years later, you narrowly beat the Packers and Rams, but you beat the Cowboys fairly convincingly in the wildcard round. And then last season as well, beat the Seahawks by almost 20 points, beat the Eagles. And then you obviously had the Eagles issue. So I think really a lot of your playoff runs have really involved a lot of fairly routine wins. Whereas I think now you've had that experience of having these games like that. And I think for Purdy, I mentioned him being game manager, but that fourth quarter drive against the Packers that late on, that really is cements his legacy. That he'll always have that now. Whether he plays just one more game, whether he plays 50, 100 more games for the Niners or more, he'll always have, and no matter what happens, whether he has a bad run, he gets traded away, he'll always have that playoff drive against the Packers to look back on in the future. You look at the likes of, even Jared Goff. I mean, he always had the Chiefs game, the 54-51 win against the Chiefs, and he's now always going to have that drive in his legacy. And especially if you go on to win the Super Bowl, that will be looked at even more fondly. So I think, for Purdy, he's shown he can do it when it matters. I mean, I've criticised Tua and Dak all the time in this podcast for not doing it when it matters, and Purdy's done that in just one drive more than we've ever seen with Dak and Tua in the big games. So for me, I think Purdy answers critics massively, I think, on Sunday. But of course, one of the biggest issues you've had, Paul, in recent times is injuries, and Deebo Samuel, I believe, is still questionable for the game. I've not checked the news in the last couple of days. Is he going to play, Paul? Is he not going to play? What's the latest with Deebo Samuel?
Well, it's a good job, Andy, that I'm refreshing Twitter or X, whatever you call it. So yesterday he was on the practice field, but he wasn't participating. So he wasn't allowed to be on the game tape. And you've got to love George Kittle. So George Kittle's doing some catching drills, and every 2 seconds, Kittle's looking away from the ball, and he's going, "Go on, Deebo, get in, Deebo." And they had to say, "Yeah, George, you're not really supposed to be giving it away." That Deebo's like running behind you. And then today, I believe he's been out on the practice field. So that was the issue last week against the Packers. I think if you'd said 29ers fan, we would win this game by passing the ball a lot more than running it, I think you'd have been surprised. We didn't commit to the run last week. And a big part of that is Deebo was in the game plan. We all know what a great player he is as a wide back. He exited the game early, and I think that altered the game plan. So I don't know whether Shanahan is going to use Deebo more as a decoy. But as I said on last night's show, 70% fit Deebo taking 50% snaps is better than none at all. And when he's in that backfield, the Lions defense have to account for it. Shanahan likes to make the defenses go horizontal to get those gaps. I've seen the Lions' run defense is quite good, though I could poke a bit of fun. Is that because teams pass all over them, so teams don't need to run at them? And before you throw something at me, I'm going to counteract with a key stat for me will be first downs. Shanahan tends to run the ball on a first down. As long as we can keep moving the ball, I think Detroit give up something like 3.6 yards per carry. Christian McCaffrey's the best in the NFL. I'd be happy with that. Slow, methodical. I'm nervous about Dan Campbell and his aggressiveness. We've all seen Hard Knocks. Kyle Shanahan is known as a tactical genius, but he can be a little bit conservative at times, which is a worry for 49ers fans. We've seen it last week against the Packers. Maybe before halftime, we should have gone for a touchdown as opposed to settling for the field goal, which Jake Moody missed. And if you've tuned into 49ers Twitter, your kickers are never allowed to miss a kick ever, which is a little bit ridiculous, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. But I think we see Deebo on Sunday. Same with the guy for the Lions on the offensive line. Frank, can't pronounce his surname. He's banged up. You look at the injury report.
Frank Ragdoll.
He's going to be playing. It's an NFC Championship game. If you've got a chance of going out there, even to take one snap, you're taking it. So if I was a Lions fan, I'd definitely be getting ready to see number 19 on Sunday night.
Now, Paul, I want to ask you what the over-under is on the amount of times you've checked on Twitter the last week. You searched the term Deebo Samuel injury report, because I remember the amount of times I searched on Twitter in 2020, null and void, the amount of panic I had about that season being cancelled. And I imagine for you, with what's happened in the past, you must have been constantly checking your Twitter and Google to make sure he was playing on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, we record our pod on a Thursday night, and it's a bit controversial because realistically, the injury report, especially supporting a West Coast team, you're not really going to hear anything till Friday. But that's why I've been refreshed to see him on the practice field this week. Kyle Shanahan gave some interviews last night, and the noise coming out of Santa Clara is that Deebo's going to be playing. And I do just want to say how refreshing it was to hear Dan Campbell talking about our offense and how respectful it's been on both sides of the ball and from the fan bases as well. I mean, I think it helped me because I have a good friend who's a Lions fan. We've had some light-natured banter. As I said before we went live, I was watching your show with Alex Simpson, and I really enjoyed that, and I left a comment. And I'm a big supporter of the community in the UK, and I love to see everyone talking football. I know you two were probably dying to talk Liverpool, Man City,
Wow.
more than you are 49ers and the Detroit Lions. But it's great to see the community grow, and that's just what I want to say at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron's football team has caused me the most heartbreak in my whole life being a Liverpool fan. I mean, three Premier League titles lost on the last day to you, most of them in quite
Stop. I've
heartbreaking
stopped
fashion.
counting. I've stopped counting at this point.
Yeah, no. It could be another year where this could be one of those things again. I'm just hoping that news today is gonna maybe light a spark and inspire sort of Michael Jordan last dance mentality in his dressing room. And hopefully Pep just decides to just let us win it. Hopefully he just starts playing, I don't know, Rico Lewis every game and start playing David James up front like Stuart Pearce did, or
Listen, I
something.
don't care. I don't care if this podcast is NFL based. I will not stand Rico Lewis slander.
Oh, I like Rico Lewis. Now talking about over unders, Aaron, it's quite good both
Yep.
you there, but for you, Aaron, if you win, what
Yep.
is the likelihood of you going to Vegas?
They're like about as
Depend
likely as it is that I don't know, Pep Guardiola just appears in my bedroom in about 4 seconds. No, not there. It's just too expensive. I've been somewhat offered. I've been offered $80 collective with a group of Lions fans to try and get me on a flight or out to somewhere like North Carolina to watch the game with some Lions fan friends. But I think I'm going to need a lot more than $80 towards that before that happens.
Yeah,
But
I remember on your podcast, I swear you said ages ago, if you made a Super Bowl, you would fly to Detroit. I
I
swear
would love
ages ago,
to.
yeah.
I would love to. It's that would be the idea.
Mm.
If we went to a Super Bowl, it wouldn't be about going to where the Super Bowl is, as much as it'd be a great atmosphere and around where it is, it'd be lovely. But you'd want to be with the natives. You'd want to be. I'd want to be in Detroit bars, drinking with Detroit natives together and waiting for them to fly back the next day by the airport, so just something like that, rather than necessarily being in the middle of Vegas, pissing away every bit of money I've ever earned. Um, it, unfortunately, the life of a freelancer means that it's not a financially viable thing at this moment in time. But you never know. Maybe next year.
Yeah.
So if do you have any plans for the Super Bowl then? Because I'm sure you spoke to Alec on your pod off air. So the 49 faithful UK, we've grown bigger and bigger. There's an official 49ers watch party in Leeds on Sunday night. The first one I'm going to miss because January's got 375 days in it, and the fact that they've just obviously waited to put it on there. My good friend Lee Gowland's actually hosting the event. So that's going to be in Leeds. It's at 350 crazy 49 faithful UK fans watching this wonderful game. And I'm waiting, Aaron, to see what happens because if the Niners get the Super Bowl, I have a feeling something's going to be on, and I have a feeling it'll be in London. I live in Middlesbrough, not the richest in the world. Getting to London's not easy, but to me, that'll be the next step. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go out to Levi's this year and watch the Niners play the Bucks with 40 of the UK faithful, and it was an amazing experience watching your team in that stadium. So I can understand you wanting to go that way. Now, if the Lions do get there, I know my good friend Andy's got to a casino in Newcastle, so I'm sure he'd love to have another Lions fan with him. So I don't know how logistical Newcastle is for you, buddy, but it might be doable for you.
Me and my wife do have like a little Super Bowl tradition every year, and we get a couple of friends round and things like that and watch it. However, this year, if we do make it, I'm hoping that I watch games on Discord with Lions friends in the States. So hopefully, maybe we'll be on with that. Maybe they might be a bit too busy doing their own thing on that day as well. But me and my wife have we have a little tradition every year now where we have a couple of friends round, watch the Super Bowl together. Whether she will let me have people round if the Lions are in it, because I will put this down now. I am not responsible for anything my thumbs or mouth do in over the next 6 months. If the Lions make a Super Bowl, never mind win it. I cannot legally be held responsible. Send all correspondence to the Detroit Lions. It's their fault. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But so far, my plans are have some friends around, watch the game with them.
Yeah, I could totally echo what you're saying there. I've got a friend who's a Rams fan, and when they won the Super Bowl, Andy, he got the cap, he got the hoodie. He's a lot more affluent than I am, and he looked into going to the Super Bowl, and he couldn't afford it. So ironically, we normally have a watch party, Aaron, and he came to the 49er Faithful UK watch party. He was the only Rams fan in attendance with about 50 UK faithful. We were all cheering for the Bengals, but it was all good, light-hearted nature. I've already told
Yeah,
my
yeah.
good lady, we win the Super Bowl, cap, hoodie, T-shirt, and like you said, social media. Because I've been a Niners fan since 2012. I've suffered 2 heartbreaks. I wasn't around for the glory years. So for me, if we actually reach that pinnacle, like you've said,
Yeah.
my social media is normally Niner heavy. I think a lot of people will be unfollowing me if the Niners win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm exactly. I mean, I always said I'd go to Miami to watch Super Bowl there. Or obviously, if I was lucky enough to get some sort of media creds, I would do it there. But for me, again, I'd be the same as you. I mean, I went Liverpool in the league. I got the jersey, got the gold badge, got Firmino on the back. It was, that was something I'd always planned for years. And it's the same thing for me. I think when I see us win a division, or when I see us, win us, even win the AFC, I would get everything involved because the NFL, even more so than the Premier League, the window's so tight, you never know what's around the corner. With the salary cap, free agency, um, how short some players' careers are. It's one of those things where, we've only really seen the Patriots and the Chiefs win multiple championships really over the last 30 years since that era began. I mean, we've not seen a back-to-back winner since Patriots in the early 2000s. So for me, yeah, and you look at the likes of, I think there's been 16 straight quarterbacks that have made a Super Bowl and not made it again. So many quarterbacks have lost their first Super Bowl and never returned. So even for players itself, like, people thought Jalen Hurts will be back and back, but you never. He may never play again. With what's happening with the Eagles right now, he may never get to play a Super Bowl again. You never know. So you got to make the most when your team does well. And I think that certainly, and I think certainly the Lions will need to make the most of it. When in this game, because I think that like they are the underdogs. So the first time really in this whole playoff run, they are the underdogs in a game. For you, Aaron, I mean, how crucial is it going to be for the Lions to score first? Because this Niners team can punish you, really. I think a lot of time through clock management. They got their so many players to throw to or run the ball with. They can really just run that clock down and make you guys pay.
Yeah.
So for you, how important it is, especially if you win the toss and you get the ball first. How important is it when you've got players like Sam Laporta, Morrison Brown, Jameer Gibbs in the backfield? How important is it for you would it be for them to go down the field, score straight away, and just show the Niners straight away, we're here, we're not scared of you, we're going to give
Yeah.
you a game today.
But I think, I mean, I remember looking a couple of years ago at stats around the Lions. I think we were having, within Lions fans around the UK, we're having this massive discussion about how games go and where are we winning and losing games. This was under Matt Patricia. So, and I remember seeing a stat that was like really delved into each quarter, and third quarter was always awful. But then you realize actually third quarters are pretty awful around the league. Defensive adjustments at half time and all that sort of stuff. Just a pretty terrible quarter in general for scoring points, which it is what it is. And that's just how the game is. We are still notoriously terrible in the third quarter. Now, where I love Dan Campbell is in the ability it's that grit and that grinding out a game in that when it comes down to 7.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, this team is still grinding it out and we're still ready to go. But for me, it's all about keeping out as horrible. Well, it's not horrible, but as kind of maybe pessimistic as this is going to sound initially, it's about keeping ourselves in the game and making sure again, as long as we don't get blown out, we need to just keep ourselves in that game. And then hopefully let this team's identity and what we're built for carry us through to the end, which is that grit, that determination, and that ability to just kind of keep going with the game until that last minute where we can finally take it. So for me, it is going to be a case of it's going to be massively important if we can get in and score first. Getting the ball first, for me, is a no-brainer. Let you guys get it back to start the second half. We're really good on our first drive. We score a lot on our first drive. I can't remember the exact stats. Get in there, score early, and have a game where at least to start off with, it's you guys having to respond to what we do. And that seems to be a way that this team's built. It's something we've done a lot this season, and it's something we've done really well in the 12 or so. Well, not all 12, because some of them were kind of blowout wins. You look at this, the Saints when we went up really early, quite quickly, really early. You look at the Broncos where we just kind of carried that game away. But with some of those other games, it's scoring early, keeping it going, and just keep getting points on the board and making sure we hang in there until we need to. What's the famous that we'll tread water as long as it takes just to fucking bury you at the end. You know, we'll it's like that whole kind of we'll drag you out into the deep dark abyss, and we'll keep scrapping until we're the last one standing, and that's gonna purely be the key, I think, for the Lions. Just scrap your way through the game. Important to land a nice early punch and set the tone, I think. Very long-winded way of saying that.
Absolutely. I think that you guys as well, I think we mentioned this, Paul, the word few. I mean, that the Baker Mayfield drive at the end, I mean, there was a drive in the game where I think it was a minute and a half on the game clock. He got it down, his full touchdown. But of course, there was a last drive where Baker Mayfield, fair play to him, he gave pretty much all he could in that game. And he came away from that game really with his head held high, I think. But for you, I think there was definitely two sides to the last drive or so, because there was a point where Mayfield was just slinging it down, and maybe not maybe the drive before more than the final drive. I think the pick was quite early, but that drive where they went for the 2-point conversion miss, that drive in particular, Mayfield, he was slinging it, and and I think you guys were showing a bit of frailty, but at the same time in the following drive, I think it was Gardner Johnson made a crucial play. It might be someone else, but to make that interception and kill the game off, I think that also you mentioned your offense, but on your defense side of the ball, I think that's going to be key as well, is making slots and making the most, because every quarterback will have a period in this game, unless they're, some have superhuman games where they're the Chiefs. I think Josh Allen pretty much was apart from the final drive against the Chiefs, but I think for you guys, you've got to have to make most of these opportunities. It might be a mistimed throw from Brock Purdy. There might be a drop pass from Kittle, Deebo Samuel. I think you guys are going to have to make the most and capitalize, I think, on chances you get, because the Niners are such a good team all, and they are pound for pound best team in the league, in my opinion. I've said this since week 4. You guys are going to just keep making it, and when you get the chance, take it, score when you can. I think that is going to be the key in your defense, is just to make the most of any 49ers mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, and I can kind of throw this then back to Paul in a second. That this season we've had a huge issue with our DBs and getting the ball's been thrown all over him. It's not been pretty a lot of the time. And again, being on Discord with fans in the States, the amount of things that we've all called Aaron Glenn is an unreal amount of things for this reason. And it's always seems to be Cam Sutton in man coverage. That final drive, when you're talking the end of a half, teams blitz a lot more and drop a lot more into man coverage. Aaron Glenn has been exactly the same. He will sacrifice it. You have to give some sort of sacrifice in every game you play. You're either not sending enough men at the quarterback, or you're sending in too many, but you're leaving some men behind it in the backfield. It is what it is. It's just the way the game's played. So we sacrifice a little bit of that backfield and leave Cam Sutton, who's a zone coverage defender, who's not meant to be in any man coverage, who's not meant to be in those situations. So it's no hate on Cam Sutton. It's just he's not that kind of DB, but he's been left in that position. In those situations, Baker Mayfield saw that opportunity and he took it every time, and it worked. So for me, I think in this game, it's going to be Paul, you mentioned first downs. For me, it's going to be in the 3rd and 4th downs, where it's Kyle Shanahan's conservative happenings versus Dan Campbell's pure unadulterated aggression, to the point where he's crazy. But for me as well, what's going to be one is in the D line and the O line. For the Lions defense, what we need to do is we have one of the best run defenses in the country, but we've never faced a CMAC before. We've not gone up against. He's a different breed to any running back we've had to cover all season. So that's going to be a challenge in and of itself. But I think one of the things we're going to need to do is really get at Brock Purdy and rattle him and startle him early. James Houston's back now. That's going to help us on the D-line. Aiden Hutchinson, need I say much more? And similarly, it's going to be the other way around. Our O-line is one of the best in the league, and you've got Nick Bosa running at Penny Sewell, which is going to be an incredible battle to watch all game. Both QBs, I think, go into the game having been called, before the season started, both of them were just game managers. And throughout the season, both of them have just been called game managers. And it's a tale of two QBs who were out there proving themselves that they can put a team on the back. They can put a team on the back and win a game when they need to. So it's going to be a case of those D lines and O lines are really going to get, because both of them can start to get messy when they're frustrated and when they get hit and when they need to rush. It's which team can do it better and which quarterback can handle that pressure throughout the game better, which is going to be, I think, for me, a really interesting way of where this game's going to go. And that line for us is going to be what hopefully then helps our DBs. It helps Cam Sutton a little bit. It helps CJGJ and Kirby Joseph get a little bit better in coverage.
So this is where, Andy, unfortunately for Aaron, when we do the 49er Faithful UK, Aaron, there's 4 of us. We all have a job, and mine is scouting the defence. So obviously, I rang my friend Andy and said, look, I know you come on the show, but I want to have a chat. I listened to your show. Now, unfortunately, what I meant by the first downs on the running play, the Lions defence are known for being number 1 in the DVOA and stopping it. What I mean, Kyle Shanahan likes to run the ball first. So if we can get 3 or 4 yards in that first run, Brock Purdy, Andy's favourite QB. I come back with stats when I come on this show. So you mentioned your DBs. I identified a weakness there. Brock Purdy on downfield passes this season, 62.7 completion rate, first in the NFL. 14.9 pass yards per attempt, first in the NFL. 19 pass and touchdowns on deep balls, third in the NFL, but I'll take it. And he's got 130.3 passer rating, again, first in the NFL for deep ball, which is Niners fans, we're going to beat that drum, Aaron, because we're getting sick of hearing this dink and dunk game manager. You look at Jacobs, according to PFF, who know football more than me, Jacobs surrendered a 66.2 completion percentage rate and a 107 QB rating when targeted. You mentioned Sutton, man coverage. Brock Purdy loves to eat in man coverage. He's first in the NFL, yards per attempt, first in the NFL, EPA per play, first in passer rating against man coverage, first in passer rating under pressure. Now, I think that's going to be the key battle, Andy, on Sunday. Jared Goff has been better. I loved what Dan Campbell said after you smashed the Rams and you said, you're effing good enough for us. And he handed him a game ball. But we've seen Jared Goff as Niners fans. He likes to stand in the pocket. He likes to get the ball out early to the running back or to Brown, who's an amazing receiver. I'm feeling confident, Aaron, because I've got Fred Warner. I've got Dre Greenlaw. Goff loves to eat in the middle of the field, but we've got, in my eyes, the best linebacker duo in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
And that's going to take that away. However, you mentioned the battle you're looking forward to. I can't wait to see Laporta go up against our linebackers. That's going to be an epic battle. I love Brown, a receiver for yours. Draft him in most of my fantasy teams. Your offense is giving us something to worry about. But then on the flip side of that, when I look at your defense, you gave up 408 yards against the Bucs, and I saw the Bucs live. They weren't a good team. You gave up 425 yards against the Rams, and you're averaging about 8 yards per play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And if that continues against a Kyle Shanahan offense, not trying to be disrespectful, I think Kyle's going to be his bag of tricks. I think, unfortunately for Lions fans, the performance last week against the Packers has lit a fire. Trent Williams is already on record saying he can't wait to get out there and smash someone. He can't wait to create those gaps for CMC. And you're right, CMC, Aaron, this time last year, my missus was giving me grief for buying too many jerseys. I have a lot of merch, as you can see. And I was like, but I love 23. He has to be my next jersey. And I pulled the trigger, and I don't regret it. It's the one that I go to all the time. Christian McCaffrey, I knew he was good. And it still chuckle that ESPN gave that trade a C- on their grade. And whichever writer gave that grade needs to turn his card in, because for me, the Panthers were robbed. What, we gave up a second, third, and a fourth. Our first round pick wasn't in there because he has been lights out. And not just as a running back. The Niners use him in that empty backfield. They like to put him out in the motion. They like to use him as a slot receiver. He's not a bad check down merchant for the game manager Brock Purdy to pass to. But I think you've seen we're confident. We haven't seen an offense, Aaron, like this. Jimmy G comes up for a lot of hate, but when we went to the Super Bowl last time, Jimmy was efficient. He didn't make too many mistakes, but he didn't have that arm. He didn't have that deep ball threat, as we saw against the Chiefs. Brock Purdy's a different beast, and I think your boys are going to have to be ready to see Kyle Shanahan going to his bag of tricks on Sunday.
Well,
oh yeah, 100%. I think, but you're absolutely right. I don't see, and this is why I say where the D line's going to have to get into it a lot more. Don't get Jerry Jacobs is now on IR, so thank every god that I don't believe in that Jerry Jacobs is not part of this game. With all respect to him, because he's been a part of this amazing what we've done this season, but yeah, I think that's why I say for me the D line's gonna have to get to work and have to get to work early. And the one thing I will say, just kind of in one thing, is one thing we're forgetting is that we have Ben Johnson, who
No, he's been a great Aussie
throughout the season. And the one thing that I will always say is, well, nothing I can disagree with you there in terms of the linebackers, in terms of the fact that your line could very well kill Goff if they wanted to. Your linebackers are going to make things really, really hard for St. Brown to get into the game, for Laporta to get into the game. You hope that this is a game now where Jameson Williams will actually show out and that connection will, because that could be extremely important. But one thing I'd say, Ben Johnson is a borderline genius when it comes down to it. And hopefully you just kind of hope that while we scheme well to oppose that, I think, for me.
I mean, you mentioned Hutchinson. He's got 11.5 sacks. Some Niners fans are mourning because Bosa has only got 10.5. And what Steve Wilkes has done, he's come in as a DB coach. He's focused a lot on that back end. Didn't work for Ambry Thomas last week, but we're very good at getting those pressures. If you look at the box scores, if you look at Bosa's stats in depth, he's still getting to the quarterback. He's still getting that pressure on there. And I think as Lions fans, you do rely a lot on Goff getting the ball out early, but the play action, he isn't as elusive as Purdy. I'm not saying Purdy's a Lamar Jackson or a Mahomes, but he surprised us all with that elusiveness. That infamous drive last week, he got 11 yards with his legs. Andy referenced the Kittle drop, 6 out of 7 on that last drive, and one was Kittle should have caught. It was in the numbers. Why was George dropping that? But it just makes for a better game. But yeah, I think it's going to be a great battle. It's going to be a good one for the neutrals to watch. It could go either way. I'm not going to come and trash talk because that's not what I do. But I just wanted to throw in, Sutton's been getting a lot of hate, and I know the other lads on IR, but I just wanted to reference it isn't just Sutton. It's the same with us with Ambry Thomas. Ambry Thomas had a bad game last week, but it isn't fair sometimes, in my opinion, to pick on one. So I just wanted to reference that.
Yeah. So actually,
we'll have to end it there. We have got a minute left of the recording, but quickly before we do go, quick predictions. Paul, who's going to win the game? What's the score going to be?
Niners are going to win 30-21.
Aaron?
I do think it's a Niners win, but 31-28.
Well, it's a clean sweep. I think Niners as well. I'm going to go for a 28-20 win for the Niners. And that is where we're ended there for our first of 2 Conference Championship preview episodes. Thank you both to Paul and Aaron for coming on the show. And we will see you guys next time for our Ravens Chiefs preview. See you then.
Go Niners.